Hello Renaissance artists, we are in the 8th module of the first year of the Renaissance Academy of Fine Arts, and I am so glad you've made it this far. This has been a very exciting year, and I'm really excited about this lesson. I think that this will be a culmination of everything that we have been studying all year long, and we're going to incorporate today, I'm going to talk about composition and values, design, eye flow, and all of these different elements that we've been communicating with over the year. And then we're also going to incorporate a plein air study I did last year while I was in Ireland. So I have some of that we're going to do, and then also I have this fabulous man on a charging Renaissance horse, and I thought it was so entirely appropriate for our first year of the Renaissance Academy. So we're going to do a person, a horse, and a plein air all in one painting, and we're going to talk about how to compose painting, taking those different elements and putting them all together. All right, so let's get going. In the workbook section of this module, I am not going to be providing full-size images of all of these different pictures. I will give you references of what I'm going from, but this project is for you to find your own pictures and your own, make your own conglomeration of your pictures. So this is an example of how to do that. This canvas that I'm working on today is 20 inches by 30 inches across, and it is a linen canvas. I have my setup arranged like this, where I have my canvas on my easel, and then right next to it I have my computer I will have my different pictures that I'll be referring to throughout the course of this painting. I will be taping and having here and there, you may not even see them because they may be off camera, but my thumbnail sketches and my ideas and things like that I have to have near me while working. So I will be sitting on a chair for some of the time, and some of the time I'll be walking back and forth. I'm going to be doing this video like a voiceover so that I can really focus on and concentrate on what I'm doing here. So I will be holding my palette and back and forth. Okay, so I'm going to start out by toning the canvas, and I'm just going to tone it with a little bit of burnt sienna and a little bit of ultramarine blue just to neutralize it a bit. Got my trusty 2-inch brush and my palette. Colors that I'm going to be using for the most part today while I get all of this laid in are just the burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. I may incorporate a little bit of yellow ochre, but for the most part I'm just going to be getting the drawing and values in place today. That is my project for today. So I've got down here on my ledge a little bit of the odorless mineral spirits, Gamsol. I'm going to make a nice runny mixture of grabbing a little bit of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Just loading the brush. Get a little more of the thinner on there. Get a nice big puddle. All right. Now I'm choosing to go with a little bit more reddish tint today than blue because I really want this red tone to help complement the overwhelming green that's going to be in here, because like I said, one of the studies that I'm going to be using is from when I was in Ireland, and it was up at the Rock of Cashel, so there's a lot of green in it, and I really want to complement that green with a base of it's a reddish tone. Burnt sienna is nice because you can use it as a complement for green, but it's also in the orange family, so you can use it as a complement to blue too. Which is typically one of the reasons why I use it so often. It's pretty universal. Make some more. One thing I like about toning a canvas is right away it suddenly doesn't feel quite so big. It's a lot more manageable. You can kind of start to think, okay, so if I put him kind of right here and the castle up here and things like that, you can just sort of start to see where your characters are going to play out. to take my paper towel and just start dabbing some of this off because the surface is really slick. So I always go a little bit darker than I need because I know I'm going to be wiping some of that off. Set my palette down. Now I'm going to add a little bit of texture to this surface. You don't have to do this. If you're planning on covering the entire canvas, maybe this is an unnecessary step, but I never know if I'm going to cover the whole thing, so I like to have a little bit. If it does peek through, then it looks interesting. And the canvas is ready to go. I'm going to start now with my composition and laying in the design. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk you through some of the pictures that I have collected for this painting. And what I suggest that you come up with is to collect a series of pictures that you really want to use to convey your message. So in this case, I knew I wanted to paint this Renaissance gentleman on this charging horse, but I didn't want the background with the whole crowd. So I gathered this picture, and all I did with it was I fuzzied out the background on my own computer because I don't want that as a distraction. On this next image, this is the original picture, and you can see all the detail back there. And although, you know, they're more detailed, they're kind of distracting for me as I'm painting. What I do like about this one, and I may use this for reference, is how everything is just sort of covered in a filter of dust. So I'm keeping that in mind when I go through the painting, and I may incorporate a little bit more of that dusty feeling in the final painting. I'll do, after it's dry, I'll kind of glaze over some dust to create this overall unified feeling. So that's going to be my center of interest. The whole painting is going to be about this guy. So what I'm going to do at this point then, actually I have some other pictures in here just to give me a little bit of inspiration. This was him. I loved his face and him yelling. And I like to have several pictures of the same person from different angles. That way I can say, you know, what was that thing on his shoulder, or how exactly did that look? What was his hat? Whatever. So just keep some in your file. I have 15 pictures in this file. And so this next one is the Rock of Cashel in Ireland, County Tipperary. And what I thought would be make a really cool painting is to have that in the background and my charger guy kind of right up front. So I have my paper here, and I'm going to do some sketches here in just a few minutes to show you how I might compose some of these elements to create a painting with two different photographs. So I did do this as a plein air study when I was there, so I'm not going to rely on the color from this photo in here. So I'll show you my plein air study when I get to that point. This is the plein air study that I did while I was there, and if you have our From Tuscany to Tipperary painting package, this is one of the paintings in there that I demonstrate how I got these colors and this atmosphere from where we were in Ireland. So I'm going to incorporate some of this into my painting from this plein air study, which is why we do the plein airs. It's not necessarily to create a final cohesive painting here on your plein air study, but rather to take this back into the studio and either make this into a bigger painting or put it into something else, which is what I'm going to do here. So this is the rock, and I'm going to put this in the background of my painting. I do have some other images from Ireland. This was down in Doolin area, Ireland, along the coast, and I liked it because of, again, the rich greens, but there's something just sort of magical about the lighting and how it filters through there. Again, this sort of has this really neat highland quality and this haze in here, but I wouldn't use this for a color reference for a painting, but I might use it for a lay of the land and some of this composition, how the land comes down and it has this really nice angles, and there's this little creek and it goes right out to the ocean. Interesting composition, but the color is off. Again, this was looking up at the Rock of Cashel as we were walking towards it, and I have this on here for ideas, reference, just kind of getting my mind in this painting. Maybe I don't want the castle so far away. Maybe I'll put my guy here and put the castle like right behind him, like he's charging up at it or going to turn and go up, or just ideas I like to play with. This is walking around the grounds up at the Rock of Cashel. It was an old monastery. Lots of gravestones, and again, looking up at it. Ideas. I like to collect different ideas. This was the landscape around it. So now I'm thinking, gosh, maybe I could put my guy like right here and put the rock over here. And I love this landscape in here. And that's something to consider. However, the lighting on my guy had the strong backlighting, and this is a very gray day, so those are things to take into consideration. You may not want to have to fight with trying to figure out how the lighting is going to play on all these to match the lighting on the guy. If you take one object that has a really strong light and put it in a muted background, it's totally going to look out of place. Looks like you've merged two pictures. So you have to take all that into account. Again, here's the same idea. I love the cliffs of Moher. These are in Ireland. They rise 700 feet above the water here, but the lighting is off. It's a beautiful dark gray stormy sky, and the lighting on my guy is sunny. I have it in this collection just for inspirational ideas. These are the Galtee Mountains in Tipperary, and they are also in Ireland. And here's this old cathedral church down here. The lighting is okay. I don't know what I would do with this other than maybe put it way in the background. I don't want to get too many different composites going into this painting. So this is that cemetery. I thought, gosh, maybe I could put some of these gravestones in there. I love the trees. It's important to have some ideas, but then keep it simple. This was from actually along the Columbia Gorge heading into Oregon. And I loved the dramatic lighting, and they almost look like Scottish Highlands, which made me think of my guy on the horse, the charger. And the lighting would be okay if I put him here and made this kind of a dirt road. Maybe I can reverse the image and make him running this way with the road coming make this a dirt road, put the Highlands or somewhere. Just ideas you can play with when you're looking at your photo references if you've collected a series. So that is what I have for my sketch. Now I have my sketch pad, and I just have a few pencils, and I just want to kind of come up with some sketches and ideas. It doesn't matter if you're using what pencil hardness you're using. I'm just going to do some really quick thumbnails to say, okay, so let's go a little darker here. This doesn't have to be exact. If I just start saying, okay, so he's going to be kind of right in this area, and I'll put the Rock of Cashel up in here. And so he's here, the horse guy, and all this right in this area. And I can put this back here, just the way I'd painted it in my thumbnail sketch. So this will be very vague back in here. And I thought I could do sort of an atmosphere over this whole area. And then maybe I could take one of those roads that I had already on my plans up here. I could incorporate some of that Galtee, those hedgerows and things, really just to create that old world European feel, the Ireland or Scotland, whatever. But remember, I'm going to pull up my picture here. The lighting is coming from this way. And so there's this backlighting. It's kind of like behind him. So as I'm painting this, and that's what I liked about this Rock of Cashel painting, is that it was really strong lighting from this way. So that's going to work for my guy here. And he's almost silhouetted here. So I'd need to have some sort of a road that he would be working down. So if I put this like this, it's going to kind of look like maybe he came up from the castle or whatever. I'm going to say castle now because it doesn't seem appropriate. It's a monastery, and I've got this Renaissance guy here. So I'm thinking if I just stick with this, and I'm going to put him mostly silhouetted as my strongest dark right in the foreground. You can just represent that as a dark blob. And I'm just figuring out where my values are going to go. So here he is. And I may make him smaller on the canvas, I don't know. For now, that's where he's living for now. So here's that. And I only need him on here for reference for that for the time being. So here's my Rock of Cashel picture, and I think if this is pretty much in a middle tone spectrum here. And let's, I don't want this to be a bright light shooting us off the canvas. So we'll just kind of let this be a little bit more muted here, but he's running this way, so I have to give him space to go. Now my canvas that I'm working on is 36 by 20, so it's going to be a little bit longer, so I have to take that into account. So maybe I'll extend my sketch out and put the castle over here, make it look like he's traveled farther than what I have, so we can give him a little bit more road to traverse this way. And then I can incorporate some of those geographical, the cliffs and things like that. Not the cliffs of Moher, but some of this landscaping in and around or behind. I'll figure something like that out. But I think that that would be pretty in there if it could be arranged. And then I'll make this much lighter back here, so I'll figure something like that out. Maybe I'll move him over. But and then this can be darker in here. But I do want this dusty along in here. There's some stone fences and hedges, trees and things in here. So this is what I'm thinking at this point. And I will play with that some more. And then what you can do is, if you like your sketch and where you're going with it, then come up with maybe a few more detailed studies. So, for example, if I want to just sort of figure out the head of the horse, I can take my time and just do some more sketches of that before I start approaching the canvas. And try to figure out the armor and how this is all going to play into my design of that, and just to see where I go with that. So now, as far as this goes, the weight and the balance of everything, obviously my main character, the guy, is going to be the heavyweight. And I'm looking at this thinking, gosh, if he's way over here, it might be too off balance, and if he's this big, it might be too big. So I may want to try a few more sketches and see what it would be like if I made him a little bit smaller. So let's say we go like this and move him over towards the middle and put the castle here, kind of with some of those features. Maybe we can do something like this. Make the path, the road go further back that way. Okay, so there we have a little bit more different idea. So this guy fits in here, and again, he's still going to be the heavyweight, like that. But I don't like to just have one blob of dark. So what I want to do is use this to help compose where I want my notan, how much percentage of my darkest dark is going to make for an interesting composition. So if I think about maybe balancing maybe a tree or some fencing, stone. I don't think we need any other characters in the painting. I don't think we need, a raven flying at him or anything like that. But the castle is going to be character number 2. So I want these to be a nice size relationship to each other. All right, so I think that that might be playing a little more interesting. And this will be much lighter back in here. And let's make this maybe my third, the darkest value too. We'll let this be not as dark as this, but I think that that has a nice drawing the eye this way. And then we can let the sky and some of this road here be very light. That way he gets this nice right here. And then I can use some of those hedgerows and things to help be directional this way. And of course incorporating that thumbnail sketch. So I think this is a little bit stronger than this one up here. So let's go with this one. And I'll work that out a little bit more, but that looks good. Okay, taking a little bit more thinner and some ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Just making a nice mixture. I'm standing back a few feet from my canvas, and I'm taking into account my thumbnail sketch and my composition. Now I like him to be predominant, my guy on the horse. So I'm thinking if he's about in this area, I don't want him too big either to take up so much of the canvas. So I need him to tell the story, but I don't need him to take over the entire painting. So let's, if I put the castle, I think balance-wise, I mean, if you think about this, the weight of the importance of this castle in the whole narrative, it says it's important, it tells a story, but it isn't in a direct competition with this. First actor, supporting actor. Okay, star of the show, supporting actor. I also like the distance relationship that this object is to the edges. If I put it too high, it would have created too much tension. If I would have made it too equal to the same size, we would have been the proverbial donkey between two haystacks who would have starved to death because he didn't know which one to go eat. So visually, we have to be selective that way and keep it isolated to this is the main thing, this is the secondary thing. So as I start to lay out my geography here and my whole land formations, I know, according to my plein air study that I did while in Ireland, that this is about, in size and scale, about like that. So we'll just go with it very loose and casually arranged like that. I can always adjust little things here and there as I'm going along. Also, what I liked about this is that the lighting on this monastery is the same as the lighting on our guy on the horse. So when you're composing a picture, you definitely want to be watching out for those features to be the same. Now you can also see that I'm holding my brush very loosely. You don't want to get in here right now and start doing this because you don't know for sure. So if you are able to just say, well, you know, let's kind of go with this general, the lay of the land goes like this, you're able to adjust things and make arrangements and so forth as you need to. Okay, so I did kind of like that swoop as the land comes down, and I'm looking on my computer to see exactly how the land swells and rises and dips, and it comes down behind our guy. Now look, I don't want to divide this over here completely in half because that's just aesthetically not very pleasing. So I'm going to bring this down a little lower than what I see on my photo. So we'll give it a little bit more like this. And then this comes up a little bit more this way. And then I've got sort of a stone wall. I don't know if I'm going to put this in, but we'll see. I'll play with that. The stone wall appears newer than what I want the rest of this, so I may not do the stone wall. I may make it a tree or something. According to my thumbnail sketch, I do have a darker value on the lower one down here in that area, and I like that as a support to help encourage the visual this way. So keeping that in mind, I have a darker swatch as I'm laying in my value arrangement this way to help isolate the road. And this is our dusty road that our charger is running down. So it comes like this. So he is going to be in here. That gives me enough space and place to play with him and the horse and all this. And I like the distance relationship from here, the top of his head or so to the top of that. I don't think that they're directly in line with each other, so maybe I'll make this just a little bit taller and bring that up like that and bring him down, because in theory it would be a respect thing, and I don't know. You can take it to wherever you want. trying to keep some of the lay of this land back here in Tipperary. A little bit more accurate that way. And then I like the clouds, and so I will do the same kind of clouds that I had in my plein air study. And I will just, that way it gives it that sense of reality too. When I did the plein air study, I was really standing there in Ireland, and so I recorded the colors and values exactly as I saw them, which is why we do the plein air studies, so that when you take it back to your studio, you have those color notes and those value notes that, as you can see even in this photo, they're different than my plein air study. Okay, so I've got this darker patch where the tree line kind of comes to the bottom of this hill. So this is sort of the shadow. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start blocking in some of the darker passages in this painting. I know that I want a larger swatch of darker down here. I'll be putting some greens over this and whatever, but for now that's totally acceptable. Let's get the value down. Do some of the same over here. Now I don't want a strong shooting us straight off the canvas, so I'll make this all a little bit more muted over here, and then I'll trickle over a little bit of light just to show that it is getting some sunlight, but it doesn't have to get very much. Okay, and then I'm just going to put a quick over this whole thing just to give us a sense of scale. I can always just come back through here and rework the shape and so forth, but I just want to step back and look at my overall values before I get too far. So this will be my general, there's a guy, there's a horse, there's legs, and so forth. And how can I connect the shadows and with everything else. So if he is running this way, then that means that there's a shadow down here. The light is kind of hitting him this way. So we'll connect those, but I want to connect this side too, just to really kind of feature this area. So there's that, and I think that this connects there. Before I get too far, I'm going to kind of wipe out some of the brighter lights in the painting. So where do I have the brighter lights? Now, they're going to be on the horse, of course, and him, but I do want to sort of wipe out some of the area in the sky where I know that this is going to be a lighter wash, lighter value. So I'm just putting some Gamsol on there because, again, at this moment I am really just trying to figure out the overall feel of the painting, the balance, composition, and so forth. I'm going to take a step back. The grass down here is brighter in value than what I have, so I'm going to wipe some of that out. Let's see where I'm going with this. Okay, so I had my cup of coffee, I sat back for a while, and I just spent some time just looking. One of the keys to painting is spend more time looking than actually painting. Put a mark down, stop, look at it, take your time. And although it didn't take that long, all the time I'm thinking about, because of my plans that I've already worked out, how these objects are going to balance and weigh with each other. So the more that you can get done on paper and get that already, that plan and the game plan going in your head, the less time it takes when you approach this step. So at this point now, I can go back in here now and start refining things. What I don't want to do is lose the overall value and feeling. I decided to, what I'm going to do is to keep a lot of this warmth showing through to really give it that Rembrandt Renaissance feel. So we're going to play with that dramatic chiaroscuro lighting and some of that strength of the impact of lights and some impasto. I really want it to reflect something of the Renaissance. So we're going to have fun with that. What I'm going to do now is, because I had my chair back and I was drinking my coffee and just relaxing, looking at it, I am now going to pull my chair up and spend some time just getting the drawing of everything accurate. And I'm going to do that with burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, a little bit of thinner. Okay, so I am just going to get a thin mixture on my palette here. There won't be any need to really see what's going on my palette because I'm just using those basic colors. And I'm looking at my references. At this point, I'm not as worried about my plein air painting that I have for my reference, because that's more for color. And I'm going to refer to it a little bit for value. But for now, I just need to get the drawing of all of this in place, and that's my only assignment today. For much of the remainder of this video, it is simply a matter of measuring and painting exactly what I see. I am simply using the tools that we have used at the beginning of our Renaissance Academy. I will be simply measuring, using plumb lines and helper lines, employing negative space to help me determine accurate shapes. And I'm also going to be wiping out my paint as well as adding paint to help shape and fashion the objects as I see them. I left this portion in because I started out the drawing of this man and then found that he was not quite right, a little bit too short in the saddle, so I went ahead and wiped him out. I wanted to just show you how very easy it is if you make a mistake to correct it. So I use the pigment and I use a very thin mixture of paint. Working it on there, I realized there's not enough space for his arm in there where I have the neck coming out of the horse. So I went ahead and started over. And I am glad that I made that correction because just that little bit made a big difference. While I'm working my way down the man, I add a little bit of value and then wipe some of the paint out just to make sure that I capture some of that character of his anatomy as I'm going forth. Because it's like I said in the portrait videos, sometimes you can get the drawing accurate, but if you don't have the values down, it's going to be very difficult to see if you have the actual likeness in place. So try to get the values as you are going in your painting. It'll start to feel more sculptural too, and you may have a better determination of its accuracy. And you'll see as I'm going through here that I'm always taking comparisons of, I use the top of his head down to just below his hand, and then I use that in comparison to the original picture, and then throughout the whole anatomy of the horse. I chose a larger area like that as my truth. And so from there, I figure how many down that goes, and then I'll also go across, and I use it for the length of the horse's head as well. And you can use it for then how many legs down it is. So you have to get one area of your complicated image that you feel is accurate. And just like in a portrait, we determine the eye, we'll get the eye in place, and then that becomes our truth, and we use that as our basis of comparison throughout the rest of the painting. And so that's what I did here. Just with the top half of our man, he became our basis. As I was working, I noticed that the original dark mask that I had for the horse laid out on the canvas was much smaller than what he ended up being. But I was okay with that as I got working because I really did like the size and placement and level of importance that I gave the man. So I was fine with letting the horse get a little larger than my original plan. You have to trust your instinct when you are working because in this case, it was important to me that the man was that size. So everything else had to be in the correct relationship to that. As I'm working down here and isolating some of these interesting shapes, I'm just taking careful note of the different values as they are in relation to each other. So his legs on the horse are very dark and solid against a slightly lighter shade of the flaps on his armor. It's those subtle changes in value that are going to give a lot of strength to an area and really hold it in place. Now I'm double checking the measurements of the shoulder and the length of the top of his neck down. These are just large areas that can quickly get blown out of proportion if you don't just double check their measurements. Now here I'm lightening some of the background just to really clarify that negative space in between the legs, because that is a strong, clear area behind their legs that I really want to use to my advantage to help isolate those exact leg structures, the tendons and sinews. Some of these really subtle contours in the legs I can get later with paint, but I really did want to try to get them as accurate as possible in the beginning. And I did notice that some of those legs were a little bit too wide, so I came back through and made them a little bit more narrow. And I'll work on some of that a little bit more even too as I'm working on the next phase of the painting in adding color. And I want to really push some of that value behind the legs a little bit darker so that when I do the backlight through the tail, it really glows. To pull in a little bit more of these details on the saddle and all of his trappings, it's just simply a matter of a little bit of putting some odorless mineral spirits on the actual paint itself and then wiping it out with a rolled piece of paper towel or a very stiff bristled brush. I find that a paper towel works if I really need a bright light. If I need a soft or more muted value, then a brush is sufficient for that. How far and to what detail you take your first layer of paint is entirely up to you. I wanted to take this one a little bit further than I would normally take a painting at this stage because I really want to have some of this warm sienna color come through because of my concept of trying to make it look as much like a Renaissance painting as possible. So I really needed that warmth. So that's why I pushed this first stage a little bit further than I normally do. I felt that the background sky value was a little bit lighter than I needed it to. So I take a little bit of time here and I put a value over that passage, just a bit, just to knock it down a little so that I can build it up. So that's one thing that you can do too, is if you know that you need a few streaks of powerful impact, make sure that you darken the area around it so that that really shows through as a strong piece of chiaroscuro, bright, strong light with your stronger shadow. And so in the sky, I really wanted it to sort of frame and envelop him almost like a halo. In this final pass, as I'm coming around and pushing some of these values a little bit more, I'm just making sure that everything reads as dark and as strong as I meant it to be in my initial thumbnail sketch. I felt that the upper right-hand corner here needed a soft feeling of a tree, very delicate mass, nothing solid and dark and heavy and dense, but just a soft, airy feeling to create a little bit of atmosphere, but yet also guide the viewer back into the painting. And that is just really delicate branches, just suggest them, and then I just very softly, with an almost dry brush, suggest the smaller branches on the end of the branches, larger branches. Okay, so when I get it to this place to where I feel that all the components are there and then it's working together pretty solidly, I've got the darks, mediums, and lights in place, and I did push to make this a little bit more lower key than my photo references might dictate as far as the background goes. The guy on the horse, he was a little bit lower key, so I felt that I was going to go ahead and go with that as my theme for the key, the overall value pitch for the painting. So I have it in a lower key. I have the whites, just very sparse. It's going to be very much more like a Rembrandt chiaroscuro type painting. So that is where I'm at right now, and I think it's a good place to stop. Next time, on the next video, I'm going to be adding color and getting a lot more of the body of the painting done.